Welcome to this week's Bob versus Willie. It's a show where we talk about topics, we debate lists, and Bob usually brings a couple decent shirts to these shows. Bob, is that a Heisenberg shirt? Of course it is. Only Bob Gersten could wear a Heisenberg shirt and pull it off. I'm Willie Witten. Let's not waste any more time. Bob, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about the greatest blues rock guitarists of the 1990s.
Bob, I'm going to let you kick this one off.
All right. For number 10, I picked Lurie Bell. Now, Lurie Bell is a Chicago bluesman, and he was born in 1958, and his father is also a blues guy, and he had a band, and he would watch them rehearsing at home, but he ended up moving with his grandparents, and he lived after he was about 7 years old, and then he was singing in gospel choirs. And when he was a teenager, he formed a blues band, and in high school, he moved back to Chicago. He began playing with Coco Taylor and some other band, even his dad's band, and eventually, he ended up being one of the top bluesmen.
Okay, my number 10, Lurie Bell didn't make my list, although I do respect him. He's a Chicago guy. Number 10 for me is Duke Rodillard. Now, Bob, the Bob Gersten rule applies here. You only pick one decade. It was hard. I put him in the 90s because I feel like he was more prolifically solo, and he did win a W.C. Handy Award, I believe, for Best Blues Guitarist in 2000, 2001. I know it's not technically the 90s, but I'm sort of roping him in that one. Number 9, Taj Mahal. Just prolific once again through the decade. 8 albums. He won the Best Contemporary Blues in 97 for Senior Blues. Just a great player. Who you've got looking at 9 and 8?
For 9, I have Canada's Ice Queen Sue Foley.
Okay.
And I saw her play at the Waterfront Blues Festival somewhere back in the early 2000s, and she impressed me. She was part of that whole group of women that came out in the 90s, and she even won a W.C. Handy Award. She was the first Canadian to ever win it for contemporary female blues artist. And then for my number 8, I have Coco Montoya. And Coco Montoya was the guy that replaced Walter Trout in John Mayall's Blues Breakers. But he was a drummer before he became a guitar player, and he ended up playing drums in Albert Collins' band. And Albert Collins taught him how to be a better guitar player. He became a second guitarist, and then after that went on to Mayall and then went solo.
For my number 8, I like your number 9. I've got Sue Foley as well. She's an Austin mainstay. Starts the decade with Young Girl Blues, finishes the decade with Love Coming Down. Her sound is unique. She mentioned to Pete and myself during an interview that she was always a bigger fan of Jimmy Vaughn than Stevie for the simplicity and the nuance. And I think her tone, the reverb, the stuff that she does with her guitar, she is far more about quality than quantity. I love that about her. I got Johnny Lang at number 7. When we talk about child prodigies, this is the be-all, end-all. He was so young when he started. His 97 Lie to Me album still to this day is wonderful.
Well, for my number 7, I have Guitar Shorty.
Okay.
Guitar Shorty was Jimi Hendrix's brother-in-law. He was married to his stepsister. And that urban tale that it seems a lot of guitar players tell about how Jimi Hendrix heard them and said that they were better than him. Well, this is another one, except this one is more believable than a lot of the others. and then for number 6, I have Walter Trout. Now, I've seen Walter Trout a number of times, and he's amazing, especially because of the fact that he was on his deathbed. In fact, my doctor, I went to in 2017, I told him that I was going to go see Walter Trout, and he said, I thought he was dead. He says, the last time I saw him, he was skin and bones. And Walter Trout would talk about what happened to him, and and then he'd start playing, and it was amazing that somebody could make a total recovery like that and still be such a kick-ass player.
Yeah, he's remarkable. It's funny you mentioned that because my number 6 is Guitar Shorty. You've already mentioned. I also think of his theatrics. My number 5 is Walter Trout. for all the same reasons. I feel like the 90s were sort of his coming out party as far as he got out of the shadow of others and started being sort of the leader of his own outfit. Interestingly enough, I almost didn't include him in the 90s list because I had a hard time. Do I like him 90s best or do I like him the 2010s? That resurgence you're talking about, I've liked this last decade of his as well, but I went with the 90s. Bob, who do you got going forward?
Well, for my number 5, I have Johnny Lang. And the thing is, I saw Johnny Lang with the day after he turned 17. He was opening up for the Rolling Stones. And it's like I was working for Ticketmaster's Live magazine at the time, and they had me shoot Johnny Lang and the Rolling Stones, and they didn't publish my Rolling Stones pictures, but they did publish my Johnny Lang. And then for number 5, I have Eric Johnson. Okay. And Eric Johnson, another amazing guitar player and another one that is not a vocalist. And so the thing is, it's like his overall guitar playing is just amazing.
Yeah, he's my number 4. Not surprising that he's this high up. You know, I think of his Cliffs of Dover, which I know has become cliche among guitar enthusiasts because it's so popular. But the sounds that he cajoles out of his instrument are really incredible. I love his instrumentals. He's a guy you feel a little bit bad for. Some things in his career didn't go as well career-wise. Otherwise, I feel like maybe more people will be talking about him today. For my number 3, I put the man who was born as Kevin Roosevelt Moore. People know him as Keb Mo. This is a guy who released his first album as Keb Mo when he was 43 years old. It took him a while to get on the scene, but he went on a run. He won 2 Grammys for Contemporary Blues Album of the Year, I believe, in, I'll just look, 97, 99. For Just Like You and Slow Down. He almost won another one a couple of years after. Maybe some people wouldn't consider him as much rock, but I can't help but think of him in the top 5 for me, Bob. What do you got for your hot picks?
For number 3, I have Warren Haynes. Okay. Warren Haynes is, started out actually as a country guitar player, ended up in the Allman Brothers. And then after the Allman Brothers, he ended up forming Government Mule. I saw Government Mule back in about 98. And then he ended up playing with the Dead when they did their first tour as the Dead back in 2004, and he replaced Garcia. For my number 2, I have Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And the reason why Kenny Wayne Shepherd is because Kenny Wayne was an incredible, amazing guitar player who, began playing at the age of 15. He was opening up for the Eagles, and he ended up playing around in Portland. And I saw him when he was 19 years old, and he was doing his first album, and Noah Hunt wasn't even with him yet.
It's a fair pick. He's my number 2 as well. I've got Kenny Wayne Shepherd as my number 2. For everything you said, he's wonderful. He's great. He's given a lot back to the blues community as well. The genius from Shreveport has made good on his promise, not just musically, but he seems to really care about the future of the blues. My number 1, I went with Haynes. I'm a bit of a deadhead. I love Government Mule. I love how when the Allman Brothers came back, they pegged him to bring that too. You take a look at Mule, the Allman Brothers, and the Dead. I don't see how you could go anywhere else but having him as number 1. I think since you didn't include him in your 80s, I think I know what your number 1 is, Bob. What is it?
My number 1 is Jeff Healey.
Yeah.
Now, the first time I ever heard of Jeff Healey was in 1989 in Patrick Swayze's Roadhouse movie.
Yes.
And it was like, who is this guy? It's like they were throwing beer bottles at the cage that he was behind in the movie. And afterwards, you started hearing more and more of them. And pretty soon by the 90s, he was burning up. Unfortunately, he died in 2008 of cancer. And he went blind before he was a year old because of the cancer.
Yeah, he's certainly great. Once again, a couple of our picks for different decades. The only pick that I would question yours, and then you can question one of mine. I love Coco Montoya. I think he's great. I think talented. There's no doubt about it. I just don't. He was the only guy the only person you mentioned that I didn't at least consider for my list. Do you have someone on my list you just didn't think was the right guy?
Well, I thought he was really good myself. I mean, I enjoyed him, and I've never seen him in concert, but listening to his music, I don't think he's as good as Walter Trout, but I think he's better than Keb Mo.
Okay. Okay. Is that because of the style of playing that Keb Mo's not as rockish, or do you just think
exactly.
Okay.
I've seen Keb Mo one time, and the time that I saw him, he played only an acoustic guitar the whole time, the whole set. So, the other things that I've heard by him, he just seems to be more of a country blues sort of a guy with acoustic than, a hard rock in Chicago kind of blues.
And I did think of that too before I put him on, but I couldn't help it. I think his blues are so wonderful. I don't know. Let us know, for those watching. Let us know. Do you think Coco Montoya better than Keb Mo? Does Keb Mo belong on this list? Am I way off? Is he just an old timey blues guy? You got to let us know. Like it if you liked it. But for Bob Gerson, I'm Willie Witten. We'll see you next time on Bob versus Willie.